Hello, sir. Good evening.
Good evening.
What a pleasure and honor to be sitting right next to you
Thank
here.
you. No problem.
We are here at FalconX. It's one of these amazing incubators in Silicon Valley where a lot of youngsters are being guided by none other than BV Jagadeesh, Silicon Valley led
And eight others.
eight others.
Yeah.
Eight others. And
All are successful people who have built companies from ground up to exit. So we are 9 of us together.
Let's get started with a quick icebreaker round. Let's surprise the audience with some facts about you, which they don't know, and then we'll come to things which they know about you. So, who is BV Jagadeesh? Who is this person? According to you, who is this person?
Well, I'm a dreamer. I'm a realist, and I'm a hardworking. And someone who wants to make a difference in many areas where I get involved. It could be on the capitalistic side where you are helping entrepreneurs, you are creating companies, which you're creating jobs, creating wealth, or how to create an impact in the society through either impact companies or through nonprofit organizations. And primarily right now, after having built a bunch of companies where personally I myself got involved since 1983, which is when I started my first company, and then I did my second company, NetScaler. So now I'm primarily focused on helping the next generation of entrepreneurs. And if you ask me, how I split my time, the way I always describe is about 60% of my time I focus on these capitalistic opportunities, which is creating companies which are solving problems for customers, which results in creation of jobs and then creation of wealth. And the remaining 40% of my time, I focus on these social impact or nonprofit organizations where the wealth that is being created with these next generation of entrepreneurs, I try to help them to look at these social issues so that they get involved in coming back and contributing in some form or the other. And that is essentially what I'm trying to do right now. And I'm really enjoying, this part of or this phase of my life. Having done companies myself, now I'm working very closely with the entrepreneurs.
Yeah, so based on your answer, I think you are like a point of seismic shift. You're very powerful people in the society who drive change. I think you're at that point because you're from the VC world, but you're changing people to create social impact, not just to make money, but for meaningful work.
Exactly. Yeah.
So I think that's a great space to be in, and
it also helps. First of all, me and my family, right, to be grounded and to be connected with reality of life and the world, because today, at any point of time, the disparity between the haves and the have-nots is so significant.
Yeah.
And if I spend cycles on those issues, then I get to actually understand those challenges that the rest of the world is actually facing. And in a way, I'm kind of fortunate to know these things much better than most of the people because I myself actually come from a village.
Yes.
Right? The BV that you see, the B is the Bagalur, which is a small village, which is where I was born. It's in the outskirts of Bangalore, although now it's much closer to city of Bangalore. But back when I was growing up, there were no buses.
Wow.
And there was no high school. So pretty much after the 7th grade, right, I had to move out of Bangalore and pretty much live by myself and with my brothers. And cooking our own food and all that, and visiting my parents.
After 7th grade, you did that?
After the 7th grade.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah, starting from 8th grade.
Wow.
Yeah, so that has helped me to really understand the challenges of life. And coming from a village, it helps me to be connected
Yes.
with the realities of life in villages.
Yeah, you're very grounded, very down to earth, and I keep wondering why. Because it's unusual. You have this aura about you, but you also have this approachability about you. Anybody can come up and talk to you, and they will not be nervous. But yeah, so I think, so tell me a little bit about how this shift was when you moved to Bangalore. You studied in USC, so this from village to moving to a city, what did it teach you?
Yes, so many things. So first of all, I'm grateful to my parents because the fact that they emphasize on education. If you think of it, right, for a mother to let go of the children who are at the age of 10 to go live in a bigger city, that's very hard.
So you have a sibling, or you're just?
Initially I stayed with my older brother, and then my younger brother joined as well. So the three of us used to stay in a small room in Bangalore, and then we used to cook our own food because we were so young. We couldn't even stay in any hostel or dormitory or anything, and we had to cook our own food. And
why did they decide like that? Why didn't they wait for a few more years?
Because there was no other chance. Because village itself did not have high school, so you have to pursue your education beyond the 7th grade, and the only way you could do is by going to the city. And the only way you can live in the city is, at that time, right, given we could not get into any hostels or anything, and then parents did not feel comfortable putting us in somebody else's house because, everybody is going through their own challenges and their own issues. So the most optimal path for us was to pretty much live independently. And the lessons learned during that process, I would say it almost shaped my life and my career because at such a young age, my job actually was to go early in the morning, and my brother used to give me 25 paise, where my job was to go and buy one vegetable and one curry leaf and one lemon. So the money was fixed, which was 25 paise, and irrespective of what the cost of these things are, I have to get all three of them, which means I have to negotiate with the vendor. And at such a young age, right, to really get the maximum ROI on your money, right, was a massive skill.
So this you did in Bangalore?
Yeah, and I was only 10 years at that time.
Wow, okay.
I was just 10 years. And because I came from a village, they had given me like 2 years of double promotion. And when I was in 8th grade, I was only 10 years of age. So I ended up, doing these kind of things. And my brother used to cook the food in those early days. And then all of us used to go to schools and colleges and things like that, and then come back and again cook our food for the evening.
So can you tell me how you did it when you were 10-year-old? Do you remember any instance where you negotiated? I know now you do $1 billion, but back then?
No, I think basically it's like, number one, you cannot be rude. You cannot be upset. And
very true.
Negotiation is always about the power. It's the power of the knowledge, right? Power of the information. So I don't know all those things at that time, but now we all know. The better the negotiator you are when you have more information. Right? So in a situation like that, if you actually know, right, how much these things cost in a neighboring store or something, then you can come back and negotiate. And then make friends with these people. And they also, over a period of time, they also know this is what your budget is, and they have to fit those things within your budget.
So you learned So you were Ubering back then. In your own way, you were Ubering back.
Sort of.
Sort of. All right. So that's like due diligence. So you didn't have to go to. Did you go? You didn't go to business school, did you?
I did not.
Okay. Now, but you're a professor.
I'm glad actually I did not. Because I think when you go to these
you can make that statement. I can never make that statement.
Why?
With my second book, we're trying to do that. We're trying to cut through all the case studies and make templates. But when I say that we're trying to, cut through the case studies of these schools, then I cannot say that because I don't have anything to prove like you. But I'm glad you're saying it. So
yeah. I think the challenge of or the drawbacks of going to a business school is you end up thinking everything in a very streamlined manner.
Yeah.
And I think entrepreneurship and building a company and really building teams and managing those teams, especially during the early days.
Yeah.
Perhaps maybe these MBA skills would actually help when the company has scaled beyond certain level. That is where more streamlined process and all those things would be needed.
Like a factory, manufacturing process.
Exactly. Whereas in early stages of life, or of an entrepreneur life, if you put processes, people would just run away.
Yeah, because passion, labor of love.
Yeah. It's a passion, it's a problem that you are solving, and it's how quick you make decisions, and experimenting with decisions, right? Because not all decisions are going to go perfect.
Yeah.
So when you put a process, then 20 people have to sign up for this.
Yeah.
Then there'll be, accountability. And because there's going to be accountability, decision making is going to be delayed. Right? And those were exactly the drawbacks that entrepreneurship helps to address.
Awesome.
Right? Because you can actually make decisions much faster based on your gut feeling, based on the knowledge that you collect from the market and knowledge that you collect from people that you are working with.
So
if the depth of knowledge, depth in whatever you are doing is missing. I mean, take for example, Theranos, which is the company, how it grew up by itself, right? So the founder knew exactly how to communicate, right? There was a brilliant idea and an incredible problem that she was trying to solve, and an incredible communicator, right? Because I've heard her speech many times, and I was fascinated with the way how she was speaking. But later on, we came to know, after this investigative article that came up from Wall Street Journal, that the crux of what she was doing, she had no knowledge about that.
Wow.
Right?
Okay.
She had very minimal knowledge, and she just made assumptions that her idea somehow is going to work without really understanding the depth of, whether this idea really is doable or not.
Yeah, it's a leap of faith because she's so passionate about her vision.
It's a false leap of faith.
False leap of faith.
Right? It's a false leap of faith. I mean, anybody can have any assumption and any idea, right? I can actually come up with an idea thinking I'm going to have a rocket right here which is take me to the moon. Can you make it work? There has to be science behind it, there has to be technology behind it, there has to be execution behind it, right? All that has to really translate into a meaningful and a viable product. Otherwise, your idea is not a sustainable idea, which is basically what happened to Theranos, right? And we all know, I mean, she's now facing criminal charges because of misleading the investors, misleading the employees, and misleading everyone else.
So, on that thought, what can change in the current VC startup ecosystem? So, there is this notion that if you build a product and you're trying to reach a market scale, then you're trying to push the product too much. Maybe it's not meant to be. A lot of people are now coming to that conclusion. I was just watching a movie. It's called Upstart. It's about 3 startup people who are trying to Uber medical delivery to villages, doctors and nurses, and medical care to villages, remote villages, and they start delivering other goods as well. So it's a story of them, and then in that the VC puts a lot of pressure. They get somebody from a soft center company, like it's something like I think they're trying to mimic China there in the movie, and this person invests 600 crores, and they say, show us the results, and these people are under a lot of pressure. So why is fear that the entrepreneurs have to scale without a reason, or is it a wrong fear?
Well,
because I know that market size is most important number which you show to a VC when you pitch to a VC.
Correct.
Yeah.
So I think there are multiple ways to look at what you just said, right?
Mm-hmm.
So one is from a entrepreneurial perspective.
Mm-hmm.
It's always the dream of an entrepreneur to create something meaningful and valuable.
Yeah.
And you need a venture capitalist who sort of helps to realize that dream into a reality.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And during that process, the investor is looking at, is this the right idea and is this the right entrepreneur who is going to help turn my investment into a 10x or a 20x kind of a return, right? And if I bet on 10, 15 of these ideas, hopefully 2 to 5 of these ideas will actually turn into 10 to 20x kind of a return. So if that does not happen, then investment into other companies or experimenting in these other these 10 companies that failed is not going to happen. And experimentation is very important, because you cannot actually look at everything that I touch to become successful.
Yeah.
It is not going to happen, right? I mean, we know the famous quote from Einstein, right, which basically says that if you haven't failed, that means you have not tried.
Yeah.
Which is so true.
Yeah.
Right? You have to try, and you have to either become successful or you have to fail.
Yeah.
And nobody can always be successful.
Yeah.
You will always have a couple of failures, but each failure you learn a lot.
Yeah.
Right? That's the norm in which this system has to work. So it's not uncommon to see if an idea is clicking, then the venture capitalists would like to see how quickly this idea can reach global markets.
Okay.
Right? And if the idea is not clicking, venture capitalist is not stupid to just go spread this idea or the product that is not.
I see what you're
So
saying.
there has to be a product market fit,
So
right? And when the market actually adopts the product, right, then there is a good marriage, and let's try to make it as big as possible.
Yeah, so this is nice. This is a very good perspective. So let's say there are 3 naive engineers who just graduate. They don't understand the term product market fit. They're just obsessed with the idea, and they build it, and they come to you all the way at the end. It's like 4 years of their life, it's gone wasted. Why can't they come to you early on when they're brainstorming the idea? Why aren't VCs reachable like that to save them those 4 or 5 years where they're building the wrong prototype, where they don't understand product market fit like you're talking? You're giving a Darwinian spin on that, which is how it should be. But most entrepreneurs don't do that. They try and they fail.
Yeah, so there are, I mean, it's not 100% true. So there are entrepreneurs now who take the idea and then they start actually talking to customers, talking to venture capitalists, or even investors, angel investors like us.
Just the idea.
Oh yeah. I mean,
but you lose the idea.
No, you won't. I mean, if an idea is that easy for someone to pick it up and then lose, then it's not really an idea, right? So it has to be, because a venture capitalist, I'm not here to take your idea and then give it away to someone else. Why? If you have the idea and if you are good enough, I would rather bet on you.
No, see, I agree with you. You're a very good person. So your thinking is like that. But if you go to a place like Shenzhen is like a place where patent really doesn't have a value. It's a very different culture, and a lot of case studies say that if it's available, they just take it and build something. They don't credit anyone. The idea is to scale fast and don't waste time in patents. So if you look at that, then
Yeah. No, it's
your idea is taken away by someone and they don't credit you.
See, China, unfortunately, has evolved where the copyright violation, like patent violation, all of these things are well accepted. And there is no penalty or there is no government law that protects the patent owner or the copyright owner, right? So it's always a challenge in China, and that is why a lot of companies they don't want to go to China early on itself.
Yeah.
They want to go when the product has matured.
See, this is good insight. Don't go there early. Make sure you have a good market cap.
Correct. Correct.
Wow. Okay.
You have a good branding. You have a good market penetration, right? And then you go and you also know how to protect your intellectual property, so that even if they copy, right, they cannot copy and scale. Yeah, like that.
So this is fine for high margin products, like I used to work for radiation therapy
With intellectual property, correct.
Yeah, like $100 million proton radiation therapy. That's fine. It's very hard to mimic because every part is you can't copy everything. They have linear accelerators and
Correct.
cyclotrons and all. But what about these apps? Like Uber or Ola? It's very easily
Copyable.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, maybe not Uber. Uber
is
has
true.
its own mathematical model. Maybe it's hard to mimic, but they have their own way. They're O to O. Like
yeah.
you.
There are many applications that they're
Everything's
copying.
tethered to the phone.
Baidu or
Yeah.
the Alibaba,
Yeah.
right? All of these things.
What we do with text, they do with voice,
Yeah.
because they have the Chinese voice,
Correct.
NLP
But
thing sorted out.
at the end of the day, idea alone copying is not uncommon.
It's
Yeah,
not
because
uncommon.
because you cannot patent an idea.
You cannot
You
patent
patent the
the execution.
execution or the techniques or the technologies in translating this idea into a reality. That is what is patentable. So which basically
that's a good insight.
which
Yeah.
basically makes it harder, right, to take the ingredients of the idea
Yeah.
into reality. And the ingredients is where, if I'm coming up with an idea and
Yeah.
I'm trying to translate that idea into a product,
Yeah.
the ingredients of what I do internally makes it harder for someone else to copy.
Okay, great. So this is very good insight.
So if
the how of it.
if China basically looks at, even India, for example, right? They took this Uber model and then they copied that into Ola.
Right.
But how they have done it themselves, who knows, right? There may be some advantages that Uber has that Ola does not have.
Yeah.
Or Ola may have some advantages that Uber may not have.
Yeah, there's a lot of protectionism also Uber has to face when they go to India. That is also there because they build their local product and they push the outsiders out. So that's another facet of this copying.
But all said and done, India actually did not protect Ola.
They did not.
They did not. They allowed both Uber and Ola to
like
compete in the market.
Yeah, so that's like the market economy.
Yeah,
the
it's
best
a market
player
economy.
wins.
The consumer benefited out of it, both from a functionality perspective and from pricing perspective.
Nice. If you have to start all over again at 25, how would you do it differently? And if you are 25 today, what would you do? I think you'll say, I don't want to change anything. My life is perfect.
Yeah, I think the experiments of entrepreneurship, first of all, it has to be within you. See, for me, this whole entrepreneurship dream started when I was doing my master's degree in Bombay. Right? That is where this whole spirit of entrepreneurship and one day starting my own company, basically that fire started. And when I came here, it took me almost like 10, 11 years, right, to kind of put myself in a stable state.
In Silicon Valley, you mean?
In Silicon Valley. And also the ability to take that risk and how you manage the risk.
Yeah, as an immigrant.
As an immigrant, because if something goes wrong, I cannot be on streets, nor my family, right?
Yeah.
Cannot be on streets.
But you did it when you came to Bangalore from the village.
Yes, so I had nothing to lose at that point of time.
Yeah, but here it's not the same.
Nothing to lose. Whereas when you come here, you have a family, you have children, you cannot just put them on streets.
Yeah.
So there is a little bit of planning that I had to go through, and I kind of planned it in such a way that when I started the company in 1993, I gave myself time for 1 year. That I'm going to try this out, and if this is going to click, fine, I'm going to pursue further. If it did not click, then it's like, hey, I always wanted to be an entrepreneur. In fact, my wife was very encouraging to try, asking me to try this out, right? Because this was a burning desire in me, and she was like, go try it, right? Why do you want to curb your this dream that you have?
Yeah.
So 1 year you try, and if it clicks, fine. If it does not click, go back and start looking for a job. Hopefully, in another year, I'll be able to find a job. So that means from a financial perspective, I had planned in such a way that for about 2 years, if I don't have any salary, I can still survive.
Wow. So you planned for it. So you had a backup plan.
Correct. See, that's why
That's
an
advice
entrepreneur,
to entrepreneurs, yeah.
everybody thinks an entrepreneur more as a risk taker.
Yeah.
Actually,
He's
an
not.
entrepreneur is not just a risk taker, but he's a great risk mitigator.
Yes, I like that. It's a very good. That's what we should teach.
Correct.
Why are we hyping up all these extreme traits of
Correct.
risk taking, radical thinking,
Correct.
more organized thinking,
Correct.
contingency planning? These are all things we.
Every one of our entrepreneurs here, right, is not only taking the risk, but they're also mitigating the risk,
Yeah.
meaning continuously they're trying to raise whatever money that is required and managing that little cash that they have
Yeah.
to stretch as far as they could until the product actually gets ready, gets marketable, and in the meantime they're selling and generating some revenues. Yeah, and nobody is stopping just because there is no VC funding or anything. See, that's a true spirit of an entrepreneur.
Yeah. Wow, that's nice. So you are encouraging them to fail safely.
Correct, exactly. Correct.
So it's not only failing, how you fail.
Yeah.
So I
And before you fail, you should have given your 200%, right? That
Yeah.
means, you know, if this is the product I wanted to build, okay, build the product. This is the product I want to sell to this kind of a market or this kind of a buyer. Okay, did you try selling to that? And whether it happened or it did not happen. If it did not happen, then can you reposition the product for another buyer? Right? If there is a value in the technology, then if this assumption that you made for this customer to buy and that's not working, then is there another customer who's actually willing to buy your product? So we have to give all those tries before you give up.
So is this taught in MBA or is this something you learned on your, you think they're currently teaching in the MBA? Where do founders get these skills, these due diligence skills?
It's hard to learn these kind of things in the MBA. It's hard to teach these things.
Why don't they teach? Shouldn't they be teaching? Because it's management.
I think they do have these entrepreneurship class.
Entrepreneurship class.
They
it's
have,
different from
but
MBA.
But in entrepreneurship class, no, within MBA they have these
They have this
entrepreneurship
course.
class.
I see.
My personal feeling is entrepreneurship is not something that you teach. It has to be built in.
Yeah.
So what they can teach is processes and
Risk mitigation tools.
There's methodologies and case studies and examples. Because I myself actually teach.
You teach.
I teach entrepreneurship.
Okay.
Right. And
In Michigan, right? And here
Michigan, in Santa Clara University, and now I teach in a couple of IITs in India.
Oh, nice. Very nice.
So when I teach, right, all that I can do is I can take my own examples and the companies that I've been associated with.
Yeah.
And I also bring current generation entrepreneurs and current generation companies to share their stories, right? And that way, if there is one student in the class who has the dream, he now has a little bit of a reality check
Yeah.
to interact with a real entrepreneur, a real person who has built companies,
Yeah.
and how you can take the first step and then proceed to step 2, step 3, step 4 like that.
Yeah, that's a big boost because that entrepreneur is
Exactly.
probably going to spend next 7 or 8 years on that
Exactly,
project
yeah.
and it will change his life.
Correct.
And so meet the right people early on.
Exactly.
That's
Yeah.
great.
That's why I tell in my class, like before the class is announced, so you have to tell who this class is for. So in that, I define very clearly, this class is for dreamers or entrepreneurs, who want to be entrepreneurs, or people who want to work in startup companies because they want to understand how a startup company
Yeah.
actually works,
Yeah.
or people who want to invest in startup companies, right? Because they understand, there's no magic that happens,
Yeah.
and
Yeah, there's no magic.
yeah, or in general, people who work in big companies who are thinking of joining startup companies,
Yeah.
and they want to understand how a startup company works.
Yeah.
So it's actually meant for a spectrum of people,
Nice.
a broad spectrum of people, right? And I'm not really expecting all the class students to turn into entrepreneurs,
Yeah.
right? All that I'm looking for is that one or two lights in the class
Yeah.
that could eventually become entrepreneurs.
Yeah, this is very good example of academia industry merger. We think academia is bookish or we segregate it as, not the real world. This is like real world walking into academia and
Correct.
vice versa.
Correct.
So, yeah, I had a lot of questions about studios, incubators, accelerators and school for just for VCs. How one could become VCs? Because when I go to pitch events, a lot of people from, Deloitte, they are they are telling other people how to join the VC venture capital, like the Google venture or
Right,
Deloitte
right.
venture. So, is there like a school for VCs, or are you thinking of starting something with your edtech initiative? Like in India, even the street vendor is an entrepreneur. With that
That's
kind
right.
of reach, they're very entrepreneurial.
It's a
You
very
cannot-
good point.
Yeah. So, are you doing something like that? Because with our book,
To teach a VC, to teach
how to be a
a
VC.
VC.
That is one. Second thing, give some light to these street vendors. What they can do instead of getting beat up by Amazon. What can they do to scale in their own ecosystem? So the reason I said was there was one conference for teaching entrepreneurship skills to middle school and primary school, which they were conducting. Z Network was conducting in Bombay, for which I was going to work with my co-author for building templates for kids. So I'm like, why are you teaching kids? They're like, kids are very entrepreneurial. They need to understand. So I'm like, are you doing something, or is it too radical? Don't want to think about it.
Yeah, I think it's very far fetched, and I think this VC concept can
The
be
first
taught.
concept. First
Can be
concept,
taught.
yeah.
Yeah, the first concepts can be taught
Yeah.
because there is a lot of process in the VC. In the VC field,
Yeah.
the structure can be taught,
Yeah.
but eventually the decision making in investing,
Yeah.
right? That is not a 100% structure.
Yeah, your panel in India conference, Berkeley India conference, they were saying this is like no one has the answer to this. This panel is going to be a failure.
Exactly.
How do you know whether this company is going to be unicorn?
You
Nobody
don't know.
knows.
You don't know.
Okay.
So what you have to do is you have to bet on this entrepreneur. You have to bet on
The team.
the team and bet on the idea, and you as a venture capitalist, you have to feel, hey, I'm going to help this company, right? I have enough skills to help this company to move from point A to point B to point C.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And we have to do everything right. And we don't know the entire dynamics of who else is actually creating a similar product. Right? You will have no idea at the
Yeah.
time when you're making the investment.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right? We just don't know who
Yeah.
else is actually solving. So the only way you win is if there are multiple ideas and multiple teams working on similar kind of problems that
Yeah.
they're solving, the only way to win is through execution excellence.
Yeah, that's what you said is patentable. That's the thing. Okay. one closing thought I want to share. In working for a company in Lithuania, they bought some templates from our book. The reason they bought it was they want to create a society 5.0, an ideal society where resource allocation is not a problem. They're a small population, very homogeneous, and they want to be like Estonia, AI first and digitally mapped and everything. So they want templates from us to connect innovators. So we went through this, arduous grill. We still failed. How do you connect innovators? It's like we're building something like a dating app, but can you really connect innovators using traits based on an online profiles like dating people use? Because you just now said that if many people are working on the same problem, why don't you talk to them or work with them or know what they're doing? The only way to do it is have a platform where similar ideas or like founder dating can be done. So is it possible? Like, do you think it from will grow investors from India?
No, I
They
think
said
I think
it's a
the
laughable idea.
challenge, in this, I've seen, by the way, even in non-profit organizations
Yeah.
as well.
Yeah.
So people who are trying to build, whether my own company or even a non-profit organization,
Mm-hmm.
I've actually tried to combine some of these
You have.
guys together, and it has worked a couple of times, but most of the times it won't work because
work.
because I think people believe that they have something unique that others don't have. That's number one. And number two is they think that by them controlling, right, the execution aspect of it, they have a better chance to succeed versus partnering with someone else and not knowing the execution skills of the other person.
Yeah.
Because building a company, only 10% is an idea.
10% is idea.
That's it.
90% is everything.
It's
Wow.
execution.
Okay. Yeah.
90%
Good
is
to know.
execution, right?
Yeah.
So it's if someone has a better skills on the execution,
yeah.
building the team.
Like search, Google did it better than
Yeah,
anyone
exactly.
else. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
then building the team, managing the team, and how you delegate responsibilities,
Exactly. Mm-hmm.
right? Because if you're very micromanaging kind of thing,
Yeah.
it's very hard to translate that into a successful company. Although there are instances of certain leaders like Steve Jobs has disproved everybody else,
Yeah.
right? And there are a couple other companies that have done, but most companies, right, that have really gone big and they have really become successful and well respected in the market,
like GE, Ford, Microsoft,
are the
they're
ones
going
who have
on.
who have delegated, who have figured out how to delegate,
So we
and
have,
then build more number of leaders.
Yeah, build more number. That's a tricky one. Okay, so we have leadership and personality matching. That's as far as we go, but we're still skeptical because that's a different country, different culture. Leadership skill matching, like who's submissive, who's they call it the red personality, blue, green, yellow personality.
Correct.
So it's from the School of Entrepreneurship.
Correct.
So it seems it can be gamified. So this is all the AI guys, inspired by WeWork. There are a lot of whole scores of startups supposed to be very hot. This co-working environment.
Correct.
This is a co-working environment. What
Correct.
if you match the personalities of the startups and the people who come here? And
Yeah.
so that's where we're getting it. So okay.
No, as I said, right, we have actually tried, especially in situations where a founder requires a co-founder.
Yeah.
Right? Those are the times where they both agree that this is a good match, and this is a good way to come together rather than each of us trying to build the same thing and compete in the market. So they both have to come together. In fact, when I decided to start and when I found my partner, before we engaged in really like forming a company, we sat down for almost 6 months. I mean, both of us had different jobs, and we sat down for almost 6 months and whiteboarded many aspects of the values that we wanted to
Oh, how nice.
incorporate, right?
Most
into the company.
people don't do that.
No.
It's a management technique. You make people write down a
Correct.
list of values
Yeah.
and see who scored high on what.
Yeah, I mean, we were
Oh, wow.
very clear, both of us, right? We
So
made sure.
do you teach this to the children? I mean, the kids who come to you.
Yeah, my
it
class.
it seems like a good thing to do.
Yeah, I mean, these are some of the things that I talk about, but how many absorb that, and then how do, like in my case, right, I learned a lot of these things because I used to work for this company called 3Com.
3Com.
And the leadership there was absolutely incredible. And in fact, I meet the CEO quite often these days. And every time I meet him, I try to tell him that how much actually I learned the leadership skills, the communication skills, how to communicate with employees, a lot of these things. And these were all
It's very important.
things that we spelled out
Yeah.
day one, right? When we started our company, hey, every employee is going to have shares. Right?
Wow.
Every employee is going to be a part owner of the company. Every employee is entitled to get the corporate information, right? So all of these things, so that you keep the thing as transparent as possible.
Yeah, this is not happening in Uber or Ola. They're
And-
gig workers. They don't get shares.
I mean, when you become public, it's kind of hard to disclose. But when you're a private company, there's a lot of things that
you can do.
you have the rights to actually do it. But when you become public, you cannot. But still, even as a public company, there are ways to communicate to employees. You don't have to communicate the actual numbers. You don't have to communicate the actual dollar amount that you won because of this customer.
Yeah.
But there are ways to actually communicate.
Yeah. And ways to reward people engaged in that
Yeah,
content.
and recognizing
Yes, they will
people who contributed
Yes,
to
yes.
making the company
Yeah,
happen,
they
even
will-
as a big company.
Yeah, it comes back hundredfold when you recognize an
Exactly,
employee.
exactly.
They feel that is leadership. That's
Exactly.
true leadership.
That's what leadership is.
Yeah,
Exactly.
yeah. I think you have a great deal of leadership skills, starting with making me comfortable with this interview. So I want to go on forever.
Yeah,
but
no problem. We'll do another time.
Let's do another time. Okay. One closing thought I want to share. In working for a company in Lithuania, they bought some templates from our book. The reason they bought it was they want to create a society 5.0, an ideal society where resource allocation is not a problem. They're a small population, very homogeneous, and they want to be like Estonia, AI first and digitally mapped and everything. So they want templates from us to connect innovators. So we went through this, arduous grill. We still failed. How do you connect innovators? It's like we're building something like a dating app, but can you really connect innovators using traits based on an online profiles like dating people use? Because you just now said that if many people are working on the same problem, why don't you talk to them or work with them or know what they're doing? The only way to do it is have a platform where similar ideas or like founder dating can be done. So is it possible? Like, do you think it will grow investors from India?
No, I
They
think
said
I think
it's a
the
laughable idea.
challenge, in this, I've seen, by the way, even in non-profit organizations
Yeah.
as well.
Yeah.
So people who are trying to build, whether my own company or even a non-profit organization, I've actually tried to combine some of these
You have.
guys together, and it has worked a couple of times, but most of the times it won't work because I think people believe that they have something unique that others don't have. That's number one. And number two is they think that by them controlling right, the execution aspect of it, they have a better chance to succeed versus partnering with someone else and not knowing the execution skills of the other person.
Yeah.
Because, building a company, only 10% is an idea.
10% is idea.
That's it.
90% is everything.
It's
Wow,
execution.
okay. Yeah.
90%
Good to
is
know.
execution,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So it's if someone has a better skills on the execution,
yeah.
building the team.
Like search, Google did it better than
Yeah,
anyone
exactly.
else. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then building the team, managing the team, and how you delegate responsibilities,
Exactly.
right? Because if you're very micromanaging kind of thing,
Yeah. Yeah.
it's very hard to translate that into a successful company. Although there are instances,
Yeah.
there are instances of certain leaders like Steve Jobs
Oh gosh.
has disproved everybody
Yeah,
else,
yeah.
right? And there are a couple other companies that have done, but most companies, right, that have really gone big and they have really become successful and well respected in the market
Like G4, Microsoft,
are the
they're
ones
going
who
on
have,
and on.
who
Yeah.
have delegated, who have figured out how to
Delegating.
delegate,
So we
and
have,
then build more number of leaders.
yeah, build more number. That's a tricky one. Okay, so we have leadership and personality matching. That's as far as we go, but we're still skeptical because that's a different country, different culture. Leadership skill matching, like who's submissive, who's they call it the red personality, blue, green, yellow personality.
Correct.
So it's from the School of Entrepreneurship.
Correct.
So it seems it can be gamified. So this is all the AI guys, inspired by WeWork. There are a lot of whole scores of startups. Supposed to be very hot. This co-working environment.
Correct.
This is a co-working environment. What
Correct.
if you match the personalities of the startups and the people who come here? And
Yeah.
like so that's how we're getting it. So okay.
No, I mean, as I said, right, we have actually tried, especially in situations where a founder requires a co-founder,
Yeah.
right? Those are the times where they both agree that this is a good match, and this is a good way to come together rather than each of us trying to build the same thing and compete in the market. So they both have to come together. In fact, when I decided to start and when I found my partner, before we engaged in really like forming a company, we sat down for almost 6 months. I mean, both of us had different jobs, and we sat down for almost 6 months and whiteboarded many aspects of the values that we wanted to
Oh, how nice.
incorporate, right,
Most
into the company.
most people don't do that.
No.
It's a management technique. You make people write down a
Correct.
list of values and see who scored high on what.
Yeah, I mean, we were
Oh, wow.
very clear, both of us, right? We
So
made sure.
do you teach this to the children? I mean, the kids who come to you.
Yeah, my
it
class.
seems like a good thing to do.
Yeah, I mean, these are some of the things that I talk about, but how many absorb that and then how do, like in my case, right, I learned a lot of these things because I used to work for this company called 3Com.
3Com.
And the leadership there was absolutely incredible. And in fact, I meet the CEO quite often these days. And every time I meet him, I try to tell him that how much actually I learned the leadership skills, the communication skills, how to communicate with employees, a lot of these things. And these were all
It's very important.
things that we spelled out
Yeah.
day one, right? When we started our company, hey, every employee is going to have shares. Right?
Wow.
Every employee is going to be a part owner of the company. Every employee is entitled to get the corporate information, right? So all of these things, so that you keep the thing as transparent as possible.
Yeah, this is not happening in Uber or Ola. They're gig workers. They don't get shares.
I mean, when you become public, it's kind of hard to disclose. But when you're a private company, there's a lot of things that
you can do.
you have the rights to actually do it. But when you become public, you cannot. But still, even as a public company, there are ways to communicate to employees. You don't have to communicate the actual numbers. You don't have to communicate the actual dollar amount that you won because of this customer.
Yeah.
But there are ways to actually communicate.
Yeah. And ways to reward people engaged in that.
Yeah,
content.
and people, and recognizing
Yes, they will
people who contributed
Yes,
to
yes.
making the company,
Yeah,
happen,
they
even
will-
as a big company.
Yeah, it comes back 100-fold when you recognize an
Exactly,
employee.
exactly.
They feel that is leadership. That's true
Exactly.
leadership.
That's what leadership is,
Yeah,
exactly.
yeah. I think you have a great deal of leadership skills, starting with making me comfortable with this interview. So I want to go on forever.
Yeah, no problem. We'll do another time.
Let's do another time. This question is, tell me some. But now you're making such a big.
The bookish knowledge.
I have a follow-up thought on that. You don't have to.
Depth.
Yeah, this is very good. let's say there are 3 naive engineers. All right. If you have
in Bombay, right? That is, and when I came here, it took.
these due diligence skills,
It's hard to do.
how's one? So let's do another time.